Hey everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories. Today we're doing some from r/let's not meet. That means these are all true stories. Follow my Instagram, join my Discord, and subscribe for more videos. Let's get straight into this. There was a man hiding in our house for a few weeks. Okay, I want to start by saying, this actually happened. This isn't some creepy story or something I made up. I still have trouble sleeping alone because of it. Even now, years later at 27, I check every closet and lock every door at least 3 times before bed. So, yeah. Here's why I don't stay home alone anymore. I was 16, almost 17F, living with my mom and my little brother, Ryan, like 7 at the time. My mom worked night shifts at a nursing home, so I was usually the one watching Ryan when she was gone. Since he was younger, he'd be asleep by 8, and I'd just do my thing. Watch TV, scroll on my phone, eat junk food. You know, typical teenager stuff. We lived in this little one-story house on the edge of some woods. It wasn't totally isolated, but there weren't many neighbors nearby either. I used to love having the house to myself at night, until all of this happened. So, the first time I noticed something weird, it was small. I was in bed around 11 p.m., scrolling through my phone when I heard this shuffling sound, like someone dragging their feet on the carpet. I froze. Ryan was asleep. My mom wasn't home. I sat there, holding my breath, listening. It was quiet for a few seconds, and then I heard it again. A soft scuffing noise, like someone was moving real slowly through the living room. I grabbed my phone and crept out of my room, my heart pounding. I checked the front door. Locked. The windows are locked. Nothing looked out of place. But then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The hall closet was open. Just a crack. We never left that door open. Ever. I stood there for a second, my whole body on edge. I wanted to just turn around and go back to my room, but my dumbass decided to check. I pulled the door open fast. Nothing. Just coats and shoes. I remember laughing at myself. I was just being paranoid. Still, I locked the closet door before I went back to bed. A few nights later, I woke up out of nowhere. At first, I didn't know why. Then I realized I could hear breathing. I was laying there completely still, my whole body locked up in fear. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside my room. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. I shined it around. Nothing. The room was empty. The closet was closed. I barely slept the rest of the night. After that, I started feeling weird all the time, like I was being watched. Like whenever I turned my back, someone was just out of sight, peeking around a corner. I told my mom, but she just brushed it off. Then, about a week later, she woke me up after coming home early from work. She looked off. She asked me why the back door was unlocked, and I assured her I'd locked it, and she told me it was unlocked and she just had to lock it. I knew without a doubt that I had locked it the night before, but I didn't argue. That night, I was on edge. I kept my bedroom door locked and my phone in my hand, just in case. I woke out to more breathing and just that, gut feeling that someone's watching you. My whole body went cold. I sat up, barely breathing, and listened. I noticed my closet door was open, which was also weird. I turned on my flashlight just in time to see it swing open another inch. And that's when I saw him. I swear to you, there was a man crouched inside my closet, skin pale as hell, hair greasy and matted. He was too thin, like he hadn't eaten in weeks, and he was grinning at me. I don't even remember getting out of bed. One second I was staring at him, the next I was slamming my door shut and running to Ryan's room. Ryan woke up crying as I grabbed him and ran out of the house, my phone already dialing 911. The cops got there fast. They found him still in my closet. Turns out he had been living in our crawl space for weeks. He had gotten in through a loose vent in the basement and had been sneaking into the house at night, watching us sleep, taking food when we weren't looking. But the worst part? When they pulled him out, they found something tucked behind my coats. A knife. The police said he was probably waiting for the right moment. I try not to think about what would have happened if I hadn't woken up that night. I swear this actually happened and it fucks with me to this day. So, to the man in my closet, let's never ever meet again. Airbnb owner acted weird. I left when I saw a chair with the ropes in my bedroom. Was watching a YouTube video where the YouTuber tells let's not meet stories of weird encounters with landlords or in hostels. Reminded me of this one that happened to me a few months ago. Disclaimer, that might not be as scary as other stories in this subreddit, but watching those videos made me paranoid, which is why I decided to leave that Airbnb rather than risk being the victim in a true crime story. As I said, this happened a few months ago, if I remember correctly, in January or February 2024. I was visiting family in southern France and did not want to stay at their place, even if they offered, for personal reasons which I won't share here. Note that I visit them quite often and usually last minute, so I would never book the same place, and I would sometimes book a hotel room which was more expensive but better for me as I don't necessarily want to socialize with the hosts. Even when I would book Airbnbs, I would always search flats or studio flats and not a room in a flat house where other people live, as I want to be on my own, so this is an important criteria for me. So I booked this Airbnb within walking distance to where my family members stay, and it looks very nice on paper. I think it was marketed as a house or ground floor flat with access to a yard and a garden. It was probably one of the cheaper options. I don't remember for sure, but I wasn't going there for leisure or planning to have a very nice place for myself to have enjoyable holidays, if that makes sense. So I really wanted something for convenience and wouldn't pay extra for any kind of luxury. There were not a lot of reviews, but the few ones were pretty positive. So I go to that place with my suitcase waiting in front of the house. I contact the landlord who should give me the keys, but he's late. I spend at least 1 hour waiting outside, and I'm trying to be patient, realizing at least the neighborhood is pretty nice and seems safe, even if I need to walk through areas that are slightly dodgy to get there from where my relatives stay. The landlord finally arrives. He seems like a good man and apologizes profusely, saying he was in another town visiting his cousin or friends, and time flew by. First red flag. He says they were drinking and didn't have time to sober up, so he had to speed on the highway on his motorbike while being tipsy, drunk. He stops and asks me half-jokingly not to say that in my review. I get a bit serious and tell him he shouldn't drink and drive, but he says he really didn't want to make me wait further. I tell him I won't flag that in my review, and spoiler alert, I will, but didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. The guy is nice otherwise and seems trustworthy, very chatty, and open to socializing. And frankly, I was just happy I could finally get in and drop my stuff. Second red flag is when he tells me I will be living in a small flat adjacent to the bigger house he lives in, but I shouldn't worry because I would have my own place, own bathroom, own kitchen, etc. I don't like that too much, but I actually think it might be good because I am not super comfortable being on my own in a ground floor accommodation, knowing anyone can get into the yard and access the front door. Again, I'm paranoid. So knowing that someone I know is close by in case something happens gives me a sense of safety. God, was I wrong? He shows me around, all seems okay, it's pretty old, but as I said, I wasn't looking for a luxury stay. The part where I would stay is on a lower level than street level. Not exactly like a basement because there is access to a garden, but I need to walk down a set of stairs outside and get into flat through the backyard. This shows mostly when I'm in the bedroom, as I see through the windows that it's clearly at a lower level. Next red, or rather yellow flag is when he shows me a door close to the bedroom, which is the connecting door between my part and his house. I was kind of expecting that, but thought he might need to at least cross the yard or access through the front door to get into my part of the house. He says this door stays closed and it's locked anyway, not as a warning for me not to try to open it, but more like, you'll notice there is this door, it's useless for you, and what's beyond it is not part of what you're renting. We chat a little bit, too long for my taste because I was tired and also still annoyed at his lateness, and not in the mood to socialize. He gives me his phone number because Airbnb chat feature is not good, it's easier to use WhatsApp. And then he leaves. I start to settle down, open my suitcase, and get changed before leaving to visit the family. I then go back to the place in the evening and decide to have a shower. If I remember correctly, what I'm saying next happened before I took a shower because I remember locking the bathroom door, which I never do when I know I'm on my own, and I recall being quite anxious when taking the shower. So, biggest red flag before the last drop. I'm sitting on the bed and hear a knock and someone saying my name. 2 seconds later, before I get the chance to answer or even understand where the noise comes from, I hear keys turning in a lock and a door opening. As you might have guessed, it's the connecting door next to the bedroom. The guy enters and says he can't find his phone, and if he might have left it downstairs. I'm a bit shocked, probably because if he had come 10 minutes later, I would have probably been naked, ready to take a shower, or maybe walking around in a towel since I'm supposedly alone. I know it might sound like I'm a pussy, but keep in mind I'm a relatively young woman alone in a house with a man in his 40s or 50s who has control over when he can get into my place at any time. I stay polite and try to tell him that no, I haven't seen his phone. I would have noticed there's literally nothing except my open suitcase on a couch in the bedroom. He still gets in, speaking a lot and very fast while I'm sitting there, not fully realizing what's happening and not having a chance to tell him to leave. He looks around the flat and obviously doesn't find the phone. Then he says sorry and probably asks if everything is fine, if I had dinner or something like that, and then leaves again. At that point, I'm really wondering if I should stay or not, since I know you get refunded only if you cancel 2 nights in advance. I just thought I would lose the money for the night that it started. It was already after 11 p.m. And the following one, knowing I had booked at least 4 nights. I really needed to take a shower, but questioning if I should, I try to see if there are available hotel rooms, but it's already too late to book or already fully booked. I decide to take my shower real quick, wondering if he could hear the shower and decide that he forgot something else to get in again. Nothing bad happens. I then go back to the bedroom, get dressed as fast as I can just in case, sit down and think. I decide that I will just stay for the night and I'll probably be less paranoid in the morning, if I'm still alive. That's when I notice the chairs in the bedroom. There are 2, and one of them has ropes tied around the armrests. The chairs are in good shape and the rope is definitely not there to keep the armrests fixed to the chair, as they are just loose. To this day, I have no idea why they were there. I still think I should sleep there just for the night and try to use a chair to block the door handle in the bedroom, like in the movies. But guys, this only works in the movies. I try with both chairs, trying to pile them up, even trying to use the ropes one way or another. The handle can still go down enough to open the door easily. I think that at least if I leave them in front of the door, I'll hear if someone tries to open it, but the door opens the other way, and in any case, I didn't know what I'd do even if the noise woke me up. Again, I'm paranoid and anxious, but living alone, abroad, my motto is to never ever take risks for my own safety, as I'm usually the only one who can save myself, so better avoid any tricky situation. It doesn't mean I never go out, but I wouldn't get drunk around people I don't trust, and I would take a cab if I feel unsafe going home on my own after midnight. I now live in a city that's rather safe, but had too many bad encounters. Unfortunately, nothing unusual for most women, not to be careful. So, from an external point of view, this is a story about someone booking an Airbnb with good reviews, with a nice and friendly landlord who is just overly open because he likes to meet people, and the ropes are just a detail. But for my anxious and paranoid self, it's the premise for a horror story or thriller where you shout at the stupid and trusting victim to get away ASAP before the guy comes back. So I decide to call my brother, who came to pick me up around midnight for me to spend the rest of my stay at his place. TLDR, I left my Airbnb in the middle of the night because my Airbnb host entered my flat through a connecting door without warning, and after I saw ropes tied around the armrests of a chair in my bedroom. I dodged being murdered by my psychotic roommate just by a hair, with real news articles. I'm a 36-year-old female in Sweden. I have worked in mental health care for the last 18 years, mainly with people with psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia. I was working at a group home for 9 years and were very close with my coworkers there, especially 2 females. The last few years I worked there, another female started working there, let's call her M, and the 4 of us grew very close. She was very timid, shy, friendly, and we got along well. She was, however, often on long-term sick leave because of her own mental health issues, so we didn't meet much at work, but she always showed up at our after-work dinners, so we continued to stay in touch, even when she wasn't well enough to work full-time. She told us that she had a history of schizophrenia herself, just like the patients we were treating, but that she was medicated and hadn't had any psychotic episodes for years. Since I have an education in psychiatry and a long experience with schizophrenia, I have no judgment towards people suffering from the illness, and it didn't bother me being friends with someone who had a diagnosis like that. And even after what I will tell you, I still feel the same way. In the summer of 2023, I had moved on to work at a new place, also within mental health, but this time forensic psychiatry, like a halfway house for mentally ill murderers, etc. The 4 of us stayed in touch and still met every now and then for dinner parties. M told us that she had been evicted from her apartment because of an incident where she had accidentally entered her neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night. She told us that in the huge apartment complex, the doors all look exactly the same, and that she simply walked in the wrong door by accident, and that the neighbors had created a scene out of pure drama and reported her to the police. I somehow felt that while that sounded out of proportion to evict someone just from that, perhaps the landlord took that kind of action because he judged her based on her medical history, and I felt bad for her. I questioned her if something else happened, and she claimed that it didn't and that this was the full story. In Sweden, it's very difficult to get a contract for an apartment when you have gotten evicted. You pretty much get blacklisted. M asked me if she could move in with me. Since she was literally on the street, literally homeless, I said, of course you can. I've always gotten myself into uncomfortable situations by saying yes instead of thinking about myself, and I had no idea how severe the situation would get when I said yes to M. I live in a pretty small apartment. It's one bedroom that pretty much only fits a bed and a desk, a living room that fits a couch and a TV, no room for an extra bed, a small kitchen, and a small bathroom. I have 2 cats. We decided that M was going to live in the living room, and I offered her to throw my couch out so she could have a bed there. But she said that she was fine with sleeping on the couch since it's comfortable enough. I insisted on giving her a bed, but she declined. There's a door between the living room and bedroom, but between the living room and hallway there's just an open arch so she wouldn't have total privacy. I hung up a thick velvet curtain covering the arch, so it at least gave her the sense of a door and more privacy than nothing. There's another door from my bedroom to my kitchen, so I have 2 doors to my bedroom. I have to have one of them open at night since my cats wants to go in and out, and they also have their litter boxes in the bathroom and food and water in the kitchen. I naturally kept the kitchen door open and not the living room door since that's where M lived and we wanted to keep our privacy somehow. She wasn't working at this time because she was on one of her long-term sick leaves, while I was working shifts, so sometimes I had to get up at 6 a.m., and sometimes I didn't get home till like 11 p.m. I have really severe insomnia and need to combine zolpidem, Ambien, still knocked, with Lurgigan, promethazine, and even with this, I still wake up easily. I told her that I would appreciate if she could try to stay quiet those nights when I have to get up at 6 a.m., but that it's fine if she's loud when I'm off work or when I do the evening shifts. She was a heavy smoker and a coffee drinker, so I bought her a coffee machine. Yeah, I know, I'm a weirdo who don't drink coffee very often, so I didn't have one, to make her enjoy her living situation more. The coffee machine and the sink is placed right outside my bedroom door. The kitchen is very small. So the first night together, I had to get up at 6 for my shift. As usual, I had a hard time falling asleep. M had been up several times that night to go out to smoke, and I woke up every time. At 5 a.m., she started making coffee, and since it's literally outside my bedroom door, I got wide awake from the sounds of it. I asked her in the nicest way possible why she was up this early, asking if she had any plans today. I mean, she's on sick leave, why not sleep at 5 a.m. if you can? And she just said that she couldn't sleep. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I would just appreciate if you could wait with making the coffee till 6 a.m. since I really need this last hour of sleep because of work." Adding to why I need my sleep is that I have epilepsy that gets really bad when I don't get enough sleep. I usually get a lot of seizures when I don't get at least 4 hours of sleep. I knew that I would probably get seizures at work now, meaning that this day would be both stressful and potentially dangerous for me since there's a huge risk that I fall and hurt myself. And it's not a good thing to get cramps and seizures among mentally unstable criminal clients who you are supposed to care for. I know that it's not an ideal situation to work in that field with my condition, and I can inform you all that I did quit after only 6 months. She said that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes, but that she would try to wait the next time I have to work. I accepted it and went on with my day, but things didn't get better. She continued to wake me up early in the morning and through the nights, and continued to promise to stop, but insisted that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes. I suggested making the coffee the night before, or drinking iced coffee or Coke instead, but she didn't want that. I may add that she demanded for me to be silent at 10 p.m. because that's when she wanted to sleep. And I respected that. She used to get these moments of binge eating where she would empty my fridge and pantry from everything I had. I remember this one time when I had bought a big loaf of bread and she texted me 30 minutes after I left the apartment saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I ate your loaf of bread, I will buy it back once I get money." Like an entire loaf of bread in 30 minutes. I had told her when she moved in to feel at home and what's mine is yours, so I couldn't really get mad, but it started to annoy me for 2 reasons. It was getting kind of expensive since it was such huge amounts, and it was always in inconvenient times of the day, like after an evening shift when the store was closed and I came home hungry and she had emptied the kitchen from everything I had bought the same day. M had long black hair that was everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the bathtub. I'm no clean freak, but I think anyone could understand that this isn't the nicest thing to step in or see everywhere in your house. She also left her fingernails and toenails on the bathroom floor. It was also pee drops on the toilet seat every time she had been to the toilet. I saw a silverfish on my bathroom floor, never ever seen one before. And they eat hair and skin and nails. So I figured this fella probably enjoyed life because of the new dirty condition my bot room was in. At first, I didn't want to say it straight out because I thought it would hurt her and I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So I just put a broom and shovel in the bathroom to imply that we needed to sweep the floor more often. This didn't seem to work, so after a while, I told her in the nicest way possible with a smile on my face, "Do you think we could try to clean the floor in the bathroom more often? We tend to lose some hair when we brush it and I'm afraid we may get pests. I saw a silverfish the other day and I don't want it to get worse." I always made sure to say we instead of you so she wouldn't feel attacked. She promised to think about it, but nothing changed. I started dating a guy and was head over heels for him. He was also in a roommate situation, so we had a tough time getting any alone time. I asked M if there's any chance that we could get one night to ourselves every now and then in the apartment, and that she, of course, would get the apartment to herself as well. She didn't like the idea and claimed that she had nowhere to go, no friends or family. Now, I wasn't asking her to leave for 24 hours. Just a few hours so we could just get some quality time together. She could just go to the library or take a walk or whatever. I was at work for 8 to 10 hours 5 days a week, so she got a lot herself. One of our old coworkers realized that this was really tearing at my mood, to never get any time for myself. And I started feeling really suffocated. She offered that M could stay the night at her place. After all, they were friends too. M said she didn't want to bother her, but we told her that she didn't. They're friends. She's more than welcome. And I really just want one night to myself and my guy. I didn't understand why she made such a big deal over leaving me in the apartment for just one night. She eventually accepted and spent the night there, and I spent the night away the next week so she could get more alone time too. When I came home the next morning from my night away, I saw that my cat's water bowl was completely dried out. There was no spill on the floor, and it looked like it had been wiped out with a towel or paper. I had filled it to the brim just the night before. I asked her how this was possible, and she said that the cats must have tipped it out, but there was nothing on the floor like I said. My cats are overly social and usually cuddle up with strangers after just a few minutes. I noticed that the cats withdrew from her more and more over time, and the last couple of weeks they never left my bedroom except from when they ate or used the litter box. It seemed like they were scared of her, which I couldn't figure out since she was so timid. I had this old saucepan from the 60s that meant a lot to me. You probably wonder how a saucepan can mean a lot to someone, but it was my grandmother's and it's the only thing I have that belongs to her. My mother used to cook for me with it when I was little, so it has a great nostalgic value to me. She burnt it one day and made no attempt to clean it, she just left it on the stove and went out to smoke. I found it ruined and cried. She didn't even say I'm sorry. She also broke dishes several times and didn't bother to replace them or apologize. This added to my frustration with her naturally. It had been probably gone 2 months now, and she kept waking me up at night, kept binge eating my food, never cleaned, never left the house, scared my cats, and ruined my things. I realized she stole my prescripted sleeping pills. Lots of them as well, and I only get 1 per night, not more or less. And as you already know, I really need them. I had 20 of them in nightstand when I left for work, and when I came home, they were gone. She denied, which is pretty hilarious since no one else could have been there. My frustration was getting heavy. The summer heat was strong and I felt locked up in my tiny bedroom with my 2 cats, never getting any time to myself. Never any alone time with the guy I was dating except for once every 14th day. My apartment was messy and she was stealing from me, etc. Out of nowhere, my old elementary school classmate texted me on Facebook asking me how I know M. He had seen that I had posted on Facebook that we were roommates now. I told him that we were old co-workers and that she needed a place to stay because she got evicted. He said, "I know. Do you know why she was evicted?" Yeah, she accidentally went into her neighbor's apartment, he said. That's not the full story. She broke in and snuck up to their sleeping baby with a knife in her hand, but luckily the father woke up and wrestled her down and managed to save the baby. I felt sick to my stomach. Could this be true? It would certainly explain why she was evicted, but it just sounded so horrible, and she is such a timid, nice girl. I had so many questions. But my friend had the full police report. Apparently the couple that M had broken into was his ex-girlfriend and her family. It seemed that M had a psychosis during the break-in, but those parts weren't public. It was, however, clear to me that she had been lying to me about what had happened and about how long she had been mentally stable. I started getting quite paranoid now, and I was already frustrated with everything and really wanted her to move out. We did, however, have a contract that she had 30 days notice. I knew that if I asked her in a harsh way, it would mean 30 days of chaos until she moves out, so I wanted to handle this as nicely as I could. I started looking for cheap hostels for her that I could suggest to her so she wouldn't be on the streets. I sat down with her and told her that I loved living with her and I feel really horrible for this, but I just miss my alone time and that the apartment is too small for 2 people. I said it wasn't personal and that I wouldn't want to live with anyone right now and that I wished it would have worked out and that I am really sorry and hope we will remain friends. She looked crushed and said that it wasn't possible. I showed her the hostel I found and said that I understood that it wasn't the ultimate situation, but I really needed her to move out because I felt suffocated, and also the summer heat was making it tough to always have the door to the bedroom closed, and that it was tough for me to not get my sleep, etc. She said okay, she was going to try to move out, but not until 30 days had passed, and I said of course. The first night after our talk, she got up and made her coffee at 2:30 a.m. I nearly had a mental breakdown. I was going to get up at 6 and couldn't go back to sleep. I asked her in the morning for probably the 10th time to not make coffee till I get up, but she didn't even answer me. She just sat in the sofa and stared out the window. I said, "M?" And she kept staring. I was freaked out, but left for work. She kept being weird, kept making a mess, kept waking me up, kept eating my food, and all I could think about was the incident with her and the baby and the knife. I eventually got so pissed off about being woken up by the coffee maker, so I plugged it out and stored it in my attic, which she had no access to. It may be childish, but I was getting so tired at this moment. My sleeping pills were stolen, and I was starting to feel like Edward Norton in the beginning of Fight Club. Well, the next night I woke up at 4 a.m. by her making coffee in a saucepan. Not my grandmother's saucepan, that one was ruined. I tried talking to her again, explaining the situation, but she just stared and didn't reply. Me, being frustrated and on the tipping point, took the saucepan and stored it in the attic as well. I know, but I was going crazy and just wanted her to stop with these nightly coffee routines and get the hint. The third night, I had the guy I was dating sleeping at our place because I was getting really paranoid now over her weird behavior. Not speaking with me, just staring into space. I woke up from my very light snooze by him poking me. He whispered, "Look." In the doorway, M was just standing silently, staring at us. This was like a scene from a horror movie with her long black hair over her face. I kid you not. I didn't say anything at first because I wanted to know if she just stood there for a second doing something by the door, but I realized after a while that she was actually just standing still staring at us. It reminded me of the ending of Paranormal Activity when Katie just stares at Micah in the final scene. So I sat up and said, "What are you doing?" But before I could finish the sentence, she just slammed the door shut, and I heard the sound of something metal falling on the floor and her running into the living room. I yelled out, "You need to leave," and started crying hysterically because this was turning into a fucking nightmare. Of course, I didn't go back to sleep, and I was really happy that I had company that night. I just kept asking myself, had she done this before? Stared at me in my sleep? The next day when I got out of bed, I opened the door that she had slammed shut and saw a kitchen knife on the floor. So that was the metal sound I had heard before she ran off. I took all my knives and locked in the attic as well. I then asked a friend of mine to come to my house and be here when I tell her that she has to move out immediately, that I can't wait 30 days, 27 days. During the conversation, I really tried to stay calm. I know she has a mental illness, I know she means no harm. Even though I was so frustrated I couldn't hate her, I was mostly scared and tired. She, however, didn't even answer when I talked to her, she just kept staring out the window. She left the apartment and sent me a text instead saying that I was disrespectful for bringing a friend over to her place. Nighttime came and I thought this would be a quiet night finally. No coffee maker or saucepans. But at 3 a.m. I woke up by her burning dry coffee powder in a frying pan. At this moment I just felt terrified of her. Her face was dead, her eyes were black. I suspected that she had gone into a psychosis. I stopped the fire and she just ran off to the living room in silence. I knew she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day, and while she was away, I packed all her things. I then sent her a text, telling her that she needs to pick them up and give me my keys back, and that I will give her money for a hostel the upcoming 26 days. She didn't reply. The guy I was seeing came to keep me company in case she would fight about it. She didn't. She left the keys without looking at us and left. Our coworkers who were friends with us both told me that she moved in with a guy that she was dating, and she stayed there for a few weeks till she somehow amazingly got an apartment of her own. She started working again, and I was really happy to hear this. She seemed to do well. Then in January of this year, one of our old coworkers told me that M had called her and told her that everything must burn, that she has a baby that she must save, and other delusional stuff. She had called 112, Swedish emergency number like 911, about this, but they hadn't taken it seriously. M had then proceeded to burn her entire apartment down because the voices in her head was telling her that she has to burn everything to save her friends and family. Her neighbors had tried to rescue her from the fire, but she had fought them off and ran back in and poured liquor on the fire to make it burn more. She was arrested and sentenced last week for aggravated arson. HTTPS jas lokalpressen EU Lerum Grove Mordbrand I Floda. She will serve her time in a mental institution prison for a long time, possibly forever. What's ironic is that she will probably be in the facility where I used to work and end up where she used to work herself. My old coworker was a witness at the trial, and apparently she had stopped taking her medication, Abilify, because she thought that it made her feel numb, and she thought she was stable enough to function without it. Apparently not. She had also stopped taking her medication the last few weeks when she stayed at my house. So when she stared blankly into space, she was going into psychosis. When she stared at me with the knife in her hand, when she burned at the frying pan that last night. It's disturbing to think about what would have happened to me and my cats if she would have stayed, or if I would have been a heavy sleeper. I also think about what would have happened to that baby that she snuck into before she was evicted. And yeah, I know it's crazy that I didn't just throw her out by then. It was complicated. The reason why I haven't been able to talk about it with my friends is because they sympathize with her and have minimized my experience, and they think that I make a bigger deal out of it than I believe it has been. I sort of understand it since they have never seen that darkness in her eyes that I saw those last couple of days. Update May 16th. I just remembered some other things that I wanted to add to the post. There were several times when I was going to work early in the morning that she occupied the bathroom by taking long baths. I patiently tried to wait till last minute before knocking and asking her if she could get up and get back in after I had gotten ready and left for work. Just another thing that added to my frustration. I fell really ill one time when she was staying here. I didn't know at the time what it was, but I woke up early in the morning one day feeling very nauseated. On my way to the bathroom, I literally shot myself and threw up at the same time. It takes like 10 seconds to get to the bathroom, so you can imagine how bad it was when I didn't even make it LMAO. I had a really high fever and kept throwing up and shitting myself all morning, and anyone who has been this ill would understand that you want the bathroom to yourself. Actually, I think it's pretty understandable that you'd want to be completely alone when you are this ill. My head was spinning and I was nearly hallucinating from the high fevers. One random thing I laugh about today is that it was Eurovision week, and for some reason the flute solo from Moldova's song was stuck on repeat in my head while I was in and out of fever dreams. I have a hard time listening to it today. Anyway, working in healthcare, I also have a natural instinct of not wanting to spread infection, so my first thought was that besides wanting to be alone, I didn't want to risk giving whatever this was to M. So I begged her the moment I noticed I was ill to please leave for her own sake. I could barely speak because it made me throw up that easily. Our friend in common had asked her to water her plants that week, so she had the keys to her place and could have been alone there. M refused to leave, and I swear if I had the energy to slip out of the window and fall to my death, I would have, but I couldn't. I was half sitting, half laying on the toilet with a bucket in my lap, my head sort of resting in the bucket of puke because I couldn't hold it up of the high fever, and I just begged through whispers for her to leave so she wouldn't be ill too. I told her, What if you get sick soon too? We can't share the toilet. I will be here all day. You should go to her place before it's too late, please. Eventually she left, pissed at me. It turned out I had a severe case of food poisoning and I was well again after 2 days. But my God, the fact that she refused to leave is something I felt I had to add to the story because it made me so frustrated too. I also went through our conversations and saw me asking her how long the door had been closed. That reminded that she used to shut my cats inside my bedroom while I was away at work or wherever. So they couldn't eat, drink, or use the litter boxes. She claimed she just recently closed it because she was trying to sleep. But I remember she did it in the middle of the day one time, the last few days too. My best friend's boyfriend turned out to be a murderer. When I was about 19 or 20, my very best friend in the world was dating this guy. He was really cute, funny, and sweet. I stayed with her at her apartment a lot, and he used to always come over and hang out. He lived with his great-grandmother, who was really super strict. Even though he was 18, she gave him a curfew, and if he was late, she would lock him out or call the law on him. So he always had to be home by at least like 10 p.m. Anyways, one night I was at her house and we were drinking and playing cards and stuff. He came running through the door at like 9 p.m. saying he had gotten into a fight. We didn't think anything of it really because he wasn't exactly a golden boy and it wasn't all that surprising. But after about 12 a.m. rolled around, we were all like, "Damn, your grandma's letting you stay out this late." He ended up telling us that she was asleep and had locked him out. Again, we didn't think much of it. Happened all the time. Later on the next day, I ended up going home. My friend called me that night, crying her fucking eyes out, telling me to look on Jail Tracker. I got on there and looked, and underneath his mugshot it said murder. I was literally shocked, like WTF. Who the fuck did he murder? I was just there. Turns out when he came and busted through the door, he had just mangled his great-grandmother to death with a hammer. He sat there and drank with us, played cards with us, and acted like nothing had ever happened. After everyone had left, he ended up telling my friend what he had done. She acted like she was going to run off with him. She went in her room and acted like she was packing her bags up, snuck in the bathroom and called the police. It was really scary and traumatizing for all of us, for real, but especially her. Ended up getting sentenced to like 50 years or something like that. He tried to escape about 4 years after his sentencing, and they added even more time. So I doubt I will ever be seeing him again. Anyways, that's been years ago, but I randomly stumbled across this sub and it made me think of that. Worst Hinge date I've ever been on. I told my friends what I'm about to tell you and they urged me to share it here. It happened back in December, about a week before Christmas. I'm a 32-year-old guy currently using my GI Bill to go to college in a city in one of the mountain time zone states. I'm so busy with school and work, so I don't have time to go out and socialize often, so I have to rely a lot on the apps to go on dates. I matched with this really cute girl around my age, we had a good convo, and then we scheduled a date. It was at a bar restaurant not far for either of us to drive, so it was easy. She was very pretty in person and we got along great. During our conversation, I found out that she worked in a non-cop role at the police station, like a receptionist essentially. I also learned she had a roommate whom she said was out of town for the holidays. She added that she hated being alone because she had a crazy ex-boyfriend who stalked her. I was a little uneasy at that and told her as much, and she said he's harmless, so I kinda let it go. We had a few more drinks and were there about another hour, and at her suggestion, she said we should go back to her place, and I wasn't going to argue it, she was hot, lol. She then insisted on driving. I told her I was fine, and she said no, that I had been drinking and she saw too many DUIs at her job. I got what she was saying, but I only had 2 gin and tonics and was fine, and again, she insisted. I thought it was weird, but I didn't care. We went to her house and she walked up and just opened the door. She didn't unlock it, it was already open, which I found very odd because she said she had a stalker and that her roommate was gone. She started feeding her cat, and as she was doing that, I saw a bowl of cereal on the kitchen counter. I touched it, and it was still cold like it hadn't been there for a while. The cereal wasn't soggy either. I asked her whose it was, and she hesitated and said she ate it as a snack before heading to the bar. It just didn't make sense, and before you could say anything, she just kissed me, and out her arms around me seductively and said for me to take her to her room. Again, she was pretty hot, and I quit caring about the cereal, lol. We started fooling around, and I went to close the curtains, and she told me to leave them open. A few minutes later, maybe 5, we were in bed, and my back was to the window, and she let out a huge gasp. A scared gasp. Her eyes were at the window. I turned around and saw someone in a hoodie and they took off. I heard the steps running on her back deck. I immediately jumped up and ran out to make sure her doors were locked, and of course the front door wasn't. I ran to it and locked it, and right when I did, the door started banging. I went to open it because I was gonna fuck the dude up, or try to, and she told me to just go back to bed with her. I screamed at her and asked if she was insane, and she told me he does this and goes away. And I asked her, "You know this is your ex?" And she said yay, and to not worry about it. At this point, he started banging on the side of the house on the other end, and she didn't seem at all scared and kept trying to get me to go back to her bed. I didn't want to call the cops because for all I know, this dude is a cop. Or she'd know the cops that showed up and would take her side. I also couldn't just leave because my car was at the bar, and I was terrified. At this point, I started calling her out for the door not being locked. The serial. I openly called her a liar. She couldn't come up with any logical answers and I had no idea what I was into. I shouldn't have done this, but my fight or flight was pretty much kicked in and I told her, "If this is a robbery or some kind of setup, I promise I will kill you both." I'm not a hard ass or anything, but my fear told me to let her know that no matter what it was, they'd have a fight on their hands. My thoughts of what were going to happen to me were all over the place. I ordered an Uber off my phone and didn't tell her. I just kept arguing with her and asking what was going on, hoping to just keep her talking and in the room. I stayed right next to the door so I could leave ASAP. Luckily, I never got my pants off, and my jacket and shoes were right by the door, so I was able to get dressed. The Uber showed up, and without saying anything, I just opened her door and ran out as fast as I could. I looked back at the door, and she was just standing there. It's only been a little over a month, but I honestly have no idea what the fuck I was into. I don't believe the story of just a girl with a crazy ex based off of the factors I told you. It feels like either a robbery or some weird fetishized cuck type thing. I don't know. Definitely something I'm very mad at myself for. I mean, I'm a 9-year Navy vet and allowed myself to get into a situation like that. I reported her account on the Uber ride back to the bar, and I told the bartender as well if they ever saw her in there again. A man was caught on my sleep recording app at 3:57 a.m. I hope this belongs here. This happened about 5-ish, actually 7-ish. I'm stupid and realized the recording is timestamped LOL years ago. I can also provide the sleep recording if allowed. I was spending the night at my friend's house with another friend. It was summer, so we slept with the window wide open, and she didn't have a screen on her window. We were in a safe area though, so we didn't think anything of it. I slept right next to the window with my phone on the windowsill. I used a sleep recording app on my phone because I was known to talk in my sleep, and it was amusing to hear what I'd say. Also important to note, we were completely home alone that night. This time, however, my phone recording caught a man's voice. The first thing sounds like a grunt. Her window was high up, but not second story high. Her house was on kind of a slope. Then we heard a man say, "Up, hello," in a loud, almost cheery voice. And then at the end of the recording, you could hear the man whisper, "Oh God, something is wrong." Thank the heavens nothing happened that night. We weren't sure who the hell it could have been. It sounded like a full-grown man, and as mentioned, no one was home. I never slept over at her house after that, which I felt bad for because she was absolutely petrified to sleep in her room again. She also never slept with her window open again. We don't know if he was trying to break in, if maybe he thought it was a buddy's house but then saw 3 teenage girls all cuddling, sleeping together. I'm not sure, but I still get goosebumps listening to that recording. I still don't sleep with my windows open, and I live nowhere near her now. Mods, please let me know if I can link a video of the recording. I just remembered it recently, found the video, and God does it gives me chills. I'd also like validation that I'm not crazy and he is actually saying, "Oh God, something is wrong," at the end. My friends from that night agree that's what he says at the end, but my boyfriend says he doesn't hear it. Please, LMK. A random guy saved me from being drugged. This happened this Saturday, 2 days ago. I'm a 19-year-old freshman at uni who moved from a fairly small town to a big city. There was a guy I talked to over Tinder for around 2 weeks. He was cute and seemed nice, we had a lot in common. He even studied at the same university. He was older though, he already had a degree and was now doing post-grad. The first time we ever met, we went out to grab a coffee on Monday, exactly a week ago. I had a great time, and when he asked me if I'd like to get drinks, drinking age here is 18, on Saturday, I happily said yes. We met up at a local bar and talked without a moment of awkwardness for 2 hours. We really clicked. I had to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, a man was waiting for me outside the toilet. He stopped me and told me the guy sitting at my table put something in my drink and asked if I wanted him to call the police. I thanked him but said no, everything's fine, and went back to my table. I really liked the guy and wanted to believe that the random man was just pranking me. Still, I wasn't willing to risk it, so I told him directly what happened. I said, "I'm sorry, this sounds insane, but after I got out the bathroom, some random guy told me you put something in my drink." He laughed and said, "That's insane," as if we were giggling at the situation together. He wasn't serious about it at all. I apologized and said I don't think he did that, not at all, but I'd be much more at peace if he chugged my drink just so I'd know the random guy was pranking me, because nothing like this has ever happened to me before. I apologized again and said the drinks are on me and I'm very sorry to make the situation awkward. He said that's absolutely not a problem, he just has to go pee first. I waited. After 15 minutes, I realized he's not coming back. I waited around for a little bit longer, and after half an hour, I paid and went home. Upon getting home, I checked my Tinder and saw he deleted his account. Okay, maybe he thought I'm so insane our date made him delete the app. Still, it bothered me. I Googled him and found nothing. Today, I went to the records office at my university and asked if a person with his name was studying here. The lady working there told me that's private information she can't share. I then asked if a person with his name has ever obtained a degree from this university. She looked it up and told me that no one with his name has ever obtained a degree here. He lied to me. He told me he did his undergraduate degree at my university. He hasn't. Or, alternatively, he told me a fake name. I'm now sure that he had terrible intentions and did spike my drink. I was more than lucky that someone noticed. I have no idea what he'd do to me had I drank that, and I don't really want to know. I'm still a bit creeped out about the situation. I did delete Tinder, and I'm very glad I didn't give him my phone number or my address. He did offer to pick me up, and I cleverly said no, yet dumbly told him that the coffee place we met up at is walking distance to my apartment, so he knows the area I live in, as well as my first and last name and where I study. I don't think there's anything I can do about it, though. I seriously doubt he even gave me his real name. To the random Tinder guy who lied to me and probably tried to drug me, let's not meet. And to the kind man who made me aware of the situation, thank you very much. That time I accidentally stole from a Michael's craft store to avoid a serial violent predator. Okay, so I want to preface this by saying this is my first time visiting this sub, and my writing skills are mid at best. I learned about this subreddit from a YouTuber who made a video on best Reddit subreddits, and my first thought was to make this post because I genuinely still can't believe this happened to me. This happened in 2013 when I was around 12. My mom moved me and my siblings in with my grandparents because we did not have enough money for rent at the time and she needed to save. It wasn't a big deal though. They had plenty of room and I got to spend a lot of time jewelry making with my grandma, which in my little eyes was such a win that I didn't even realize we were that poor. It was our little pastime after school, and one of my favorite parts was the trips we would take to Michael's to get beads and materials occasionally. Michael's, for those who are unfamiliar, is a craft store similar to Hobby Lobby, and walking around in it is a little girl's dream when it comes to DIY stuff. One day in the late fall, we realized we had run out of wire for a bracelet I was making for my mom, so we headed out to our local Michael's to get more. This particular day was in winter, so it had already begun to get dark by 5 p.m. My grandma, having vision problems and a bad hip, entrusted little me to run in and grab the wire and pay for it as we had done so many times together before. I was stubbornly independent, so she wasn't very worried about me. She parked right in the handicap spot in front of the store. The sun setting and the light from the big storefront windows illuminated her car behind me as I walked inside. As I was standing by the display at the front, entranced by some Christmas decor or something, a man walked in through the sliding doors. I noticed him immediately. It was hard not to. He was tall. I think I may have just been short. Maybe in his mid-30s with dark hair and wearing all black from head to toe. His clothes were a bit dirty, and I distinctly remember a big red D1 logo on his hoodie. He had his hands shoved in his pockets and walked briskly into the store, almost frantically. I just watched him. He made eye contact with me for a bit too long and then continued deeper into the store. I was immediately weirded out, but thought nothing else of it and went off to find the wire. I found my spool of wire, but getting distracted in the toy section was where I fucked up. That's when I noticed him start to follow me around. Aisle to aisle, I would be browsing and he would just appear at the other end fake looking at stuff. He was muttering to himself constantly. You know when someone says something out loud expecting a response, but they aren't really directly looking at you? Like that. As a kid, you don't really realize what's happening immediately, so I just awkwardly walked away from him each time pretending to not notice him. In my little brain, I reasoned that he wasn't following me and walked all the way across the store to the wedding aisle to look at some stuff I had seen when I first walked in. I figured there'd be no way he'd follow me there, but sure enough, while looking at the invitation cards, I get a spine-chilling feeling. I turn around and there he is, right behind me, back to me, doing something, messing with something in his pants, doing something really vile to himself. I had never seen anything like that, and the sunken eyes he looked at me with still haunt me to this day. It took me a minute to process what I had just seen, but once I did, I immediately booked it out of the store as fast as I could. Jumping into my grandma's car, she seemed startled by my sudden appearance and asked what I got. I tried to explain what had just happened when I saw him appear in the sliding door in front of us, and the dread I felt in that moment was indescribable. He approached our car, obviously recognizing I was with my grandma, and knocked on her window. I hadn't been able to explain myself in time before she cracked the window and asked him if everything was okay. The man gestured to me with that same crazy stare and said something along the lines of, "She's a thief, she stole from there." I was mortified he was trying to make her suspect of me, on top of everything else he had just put me through. Thankfully, my grandma got the same vibes I did because she politely told him to back away and rolled the window up while locking the door. He suddenly yanked at her door handle, then swung both his arms up and started banging down hard on the car's roof, causing us both to jump and me to start crying. My grandma slammed on the reverse and peeled out of there. I've never seen her drive so fast. I don't remember much after that, just the crying and holding a $17 spool of wire in my hands that I hadn't paid for. We called the police as soon as we got home, and luckily they immediately took it very seriously and requested the videotapes from the Michaels. A few weeks later, my grandma told me that they had found him. They mostly left me out of the investigation, besides taking my statement as to not traumatize me further, I guess. She got the dent in her car fixed, and that was that. It wasn't until a few years later that my mom finally told me what had happened to him. It turns out he already had 1 battery charge and 2 sexual assaults on his record, one even being from a minor relative of his, like his niece or something. He had just gotten off work from the gas station across the street when he must have seen me walk into Michael's alone. I don't know what would have happened if my grandma hadn't locked her door, or if she had been in there with me, vulnerable to that man as well. So, scary freak from Michael's, let's please not ever meet again. Don't hook up with the waiter. Sorry in advance, I was drunk most of the time during what happened, so I don't remember every detail. When I was 18 and freshly broken up with my way older boyfriend, I basically went crazy with dating guys. At the time, I also dressed very goth, even going as far as to wear a real corset and trench coat, mostly just enjoying the attention. One particular afternoon, my friend Josh's roommate at the time decided to eat at a local Japanese restaurant, with both of us all dressed up. Our waiter was a mediocre skinny white guy who clearly was a little alternative, but it was guard to tell really with the uniform. We joked about me leaving my phone number on the receipt or something, so I hyped myself up and did so. Late that night, he had sent me a text. We talked for a few days, never really having a right time to meet up as I worked 40 minutes away from where I lived. He mentioned the boots he wore meant a lot to him and some other odd things that just seemed like edgy jokes. One really late night coming home, I was texting and driving, as any 18-year-old does, and we decided to meet up. My stupid self invited him over to my apartment where it was just me and the roommate who had been with me before. Our other 2 roommates were not home. At first it was fine because I was already drunk, so I would just let him rant about whatever he wanted. He went on about his life, going to jail, medical bills, his parents, etc. Eventually he asked me if I wanted to see his tattoos, and I was like, okay. He lifted up his shirt, and not only could I see the handgun tucked in his waistband, but also his multiple badly covered up Nazi tattoos. One was even just slightly covered with a banana. I don't know what it was, but I simply decided the best way to deal with the situation was to appease him, so I went along with it casually. I don't remember exactly every detail because it was over 2 years ago and I was drunk, but he ended up pulling his gun out and putting it to my head, asking me if I was scared. I was immensely confused and tried to call his bluff, saying I wasn't, which got him to put it away for a while. When we went to hook up in my messy ass room, he pulled it on me again, saying he wanted to do it with it out. I got mad and tried to fight him off me and get it away from my head. Of course, I wasn't as strong as him and he hit me in the arm with it. Which, that shit hurt because it was a nice one. When I finally got him off me and he realized I was pissed, not scared, he started acting like a crackhead, saying I was crazy for not caring about him pulling a gun on me. He ran off, jumping the fence of the apartment complex and not even taking his car that he had came in. In the morning, his car was gone and I had a large bruise from where he had hit me. While to me it is a funny story, I now realize how bad it could have ended up. So, to the waiter from the Japanese restaurant, let's not meet. TLDR. Tried to hook up with a waiter from a Japanese restaurant and he ended up being a Nazi who pistol whipped me. I found out my neighbor used to watch me shower when I was a kid. I am 22 years old now. We used to have a neighbor who was around 60 to 70 years old. He died a few years ago. When he was still alive, he would cause us so much trouble. Scratched our car, poisoned our apple trees and grass, blew up a firework near me to cause me to temporarily go deaf on one ear when I was 4. All kinds of things. His son was a judge in our city, so pretty much everything we took to court was against us. I remember Dad often called us from work to tell us not to be alone at home and we would have to stay at Grandma's. When I was little, I think around 6 to 7, I would frequently have nightmares about seeing a face outside of the bathroom window. The window is above our bathtub. It's high enough that no one can actually see in unless they climb the roof of our shed, which is underneath the bathroom window in our garden. Coincidentally, the shed is directly next to a fence that separates our garden from the neighbor's one. I still remember the dreams. I remember having them pretty much every other night. I never told my parents when I was little because we never really talked about anything. So I didn't really share anything that was happening to me. Well, I grew up thinking they were just dreams and that was it. I did mention them to my therapist last year because we were discussing some personal problems and I felt like this was kind of connected. After coming home, Mom asked me what I talked about with my therapist, so I finally shared I used to have such dreams. I never really thought about them being real, but she told me I actually did tell her I saw our neighbor on our shed's roof. I don't remember telling her that, but she said I did mention it several times and even my friends told her they saw him there when they came over to our house and it creeped them out. Apparently I never mentioned him watching me shower, but after she told me that it really clicked for me and it was as if I suddenly remembered that, yeah, I do think it was him. It would make sense. And the fact that it happened still creeps me out. There was another incident that creeped me out. It happened when I was around 9 to 10. I went to the balcony in the evening. The balcony door was in my room, and I often went there to call my cat home in the evening. But this time, I saw a person standing in the middle of our garden. It was already dark out, and I couldn't really tell who it was. I waited for a little bit to see what the person does, but I didn't really see him move. It was as if he was just standing and staring in front of him. I called out Dad because obviously I accepted it to be him, even though I found it odd. But the person looked up at me, and even though it was dark, I could tell it was someone else. I think it was partly because my eyes just adjusted to the dark and I could make out the silhouette of the person better. I went to tell my dad who was downstairs, but when he looked, there was no one there. When I went back upstairs to my room and went to the balcony again, I noticed my neighbor's back door closing just when I looked there. I don't remember if it was directly the next day or a few days later, but our grass turned brown and we found out it was poisoned, most of the grass being out of reach from his property. Security guard at the gym this morning. So the weirdest thing happened this morning. I, 30F, went to the gym around 5:30 a.m. The building is open 24 hours, and as such, there is always a security guard manning the front desk that sits in the middle of a large, fairly empty foyer. Behind the security desk is the row of elevators. The gym is on the 4th floor, and I'm not sure what's on the other floors above or below it. A bunch of office spaces, etc. I walked in off the street, still dark outside, ready to work out. I was still really sleepy. I noticed the security guard is one I haven't seen before. He smiled hello at me from behind his security computer, and immediately I felt weird. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but I got these weird chills, and I thought, I don't like this guy. Before I could give him the benefit of the doubt, he stood up and walked out from behind the desk to wait with me by the elevators, which I thought was weird. Didn't he have to remain at the security desk? Why would he be going to another floor? But who knows, I don't know what business he has as a security guard. That being said, I still didn't want to ride in an elevator with him. Something just told me to stay put. When the elevator came, he made a gesture to me that was kind of like after you, motioning to the elevator. I faked a phone call and smiled in a way that said, "Ope. Looks like I can't take the elevator. All yours." This is where it gets fucked and where I need people's opinions. I stayed there for another 7 minutes. I know it was about that long because I listened to 2 songs in my headphones. Then I push the elevator button and it dings immediately, like it was already on the floor. Surely enough, the door opens and I walk over to it. The guy is still in the elevator. He never left the floor, he never went up. He was just standing in the elevator the whole fucking time. Was he waiting for me? Then, the creepiest thing. He smiles at me as though to say, "Aren't you gonna get in?" I took like 3 steps backward. He could tell I was really startled. Like an idiot, I took another fake phone call. Then I decided to take the stairs the whole way. As I was working out, I got less sleepy and was still thinking about that interaction, and it was getting more and more bizarre as I remembered it. Can someone give me their opinion on what could have happened here? Was I overreacting by being freaked out? I just had this horrible feeling and still do, even though it was now about 6 hours ago. Weird building security guard, I really hope we never meet again, and especially not tomorrow morning.